So you're a complete beginner and want to join a worship team in just 5 days. Maybe you're overwhelmed with which chords to use, your fingers hurting, and difficult strumming patterns, and all you want is a step-by-step plan that's actually practical and removes the concepts you don't actually need, so you can truly go from beginner to on the worship team in just 5 days. Alright, so let's go. Day 1. Right away I want to get practical so you can come away from today with something you can feel proud of. By the end of today you're going to be able to play the basics of hundreds of worship songs. Let's start with the song Waymaker in the key of D. Now I chose this key very intentionally, which we'll go into tomorrow. And I'll have the Waymaker chord chart in the description so you can follow along, as well as a ton of other songs that we'll be able to play after today. Now when we look at the chord chart for Waymaker, you can see that the chords are G, D, A, and B minor, and those chords are placed loosely above the words that are sung. A typical thing that a lot of new guitarists would do when they looked at a chord chart like this, if they saw a G chord, they would just Google a G chord and play the first chord that they found. It would probably be something like this. And that's okay, but it sounds pretty basic, and once we started adding other chords in this key, we'd have to move our fingers around quite a bit. And there are actually tons of different ways to play a G chord, so we're going to choose very intentionally which variation to play based on how complex and modern it sounds, as well as how little we'll need to move our fingers for the rest of the chords we're going to play. So the chords for Waymaker are G, D, A, and B minor, but I'm going to start with the easiest chord, the D chord, since it's the foundation of the rest of the chords. This chord is in fact so easy that it's only 2 fingers. I'll have a guitar tab diagram on the screen so you can see where to place your fingers. And if you haven't seen a guitar tab diagram before, it's just a diagram that shows a guitar neck, but as if it was stood upright, like this. Since the strings on a guitar from top to bottom are E, A, D, G, B, and E, those are strings you're going to see from left to right. We'll number our pointer finger 1, our middle finger 2, our ring finger 3, and our pinky finger 4. And those numbers will be on the diagram as well. As a side note, my ring finger doesn't work, so if you notice, I'll be using my pinky instead of my ring finger for some of these chords. Just follow the diagram for your finger placement. So to play the most modern sounding D chord for Waymaker that sounds best with the other chords in this key, you're going to place your ring finger on the B string 3rd fret. It should sound like that. Now frets are all these metal bars here along your guitar. So when I say put your finger on the fret, that just means the space before that fret. So when I say 3rd fret, we're going to go 1, 2, 3. 3rd fret on that B string. Anywhere in this block is good to place your finger. Okay, so we've got that finger on the B string 3rd fret. And now we're going to put our pointer finger on the G string 2nd fret. And ta-da, you have a D chord. Altogether it'll sound like this. Notes for all the rest of the chords. Those fingers are literally never going to move during this key. Now as you're strumming, you may have heard some buzzing or weird sound when you first played the chords, maybe something like this. You can notice some of the notes aren't coming through or there's a weird buzz. This is super common, and as you practice the chords, this will start to go away. To check that you're holding the strings hard enough and you aren't pressing on any other strings you're not supposed to, I like to play the chords one string at a time and verify each string. If I notice this D string is muted, that normally means that my finger is accidentally touching that string. So I want to make sure that my finger is angled so that it's not touching any of the other strings. Now that string sounds good. Now when you get to the G string, you might hear some buzzing like this. All that means is that we're not pressing the string hard enough. So press the string hard enough that you don't hear any buzz. And you don't have to press it much harder than that, just hard enough to where you're not hearing buzzes. Okay, we've got our D chord. Now note as we get going and you start strumming, just think of your elbow as if it's attached to the guitar right there. And your hand is just going to swing like a pendulum up and down, and if you have a pick, just use that to hit the strings. For today's lesson, just feel it out, and we'll get into how to build and strum dynamically in a later lesson. Alright, the next chord we'll learn is an A chord. We'll keep our anchor notes that we just learned the same, but we're going to move our middle finger to the D string 2nd fret. There you go, you have an A chord. And we can practice swapping from that D chord to the A chord by lifting up our middle finger. For now, I would just practice strumming down and up consistently on the D and then down and up consistently on the A, and going back and forth. Next chord is B with little m. What does that M mean? The M just stands for minor. So if we're moving from our A chord, we're going to keep our anchor notes the same, but we're going to move our middle finger up a string to the A string, 2nd fret. There you go, you have a B minor chord. And finally, our last chord, the G chord. For this one, you guessed it, we're going to keep our anchor notes the same, but we're going to move our middle finger to the big E string, 3rd fret. Now you might notice that your fingers hurt a little bit when building out these chords. Don't worry, this only lasts about 2 weeks. I recommend when you're first starting guitar to practice in about 3 sessions a day, 10 minutes each, just to give your fingers a break between sessions. So now we have this progression, D, A, and B minor, and G. Now you might be saying that's not the order to play those for Waymaker. And you're sort of right. I'll get to Waymaker in a second, but this progression is actually Blessed Be Your Name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. And it's a ton of other songs like these in the key of D. Now we could also think of this progression as a loop, and it would open up a ton of other chord progressions for us. For example, let's say on this loop we started on the A chord. That would give us songs like Jireh and Yes and Amen. Jireh, you are enough. We could also jump in at the B minor and get a ton of songs like Let It Rain or Your Love Never Fails. Nothing can separate, even if I ran away, 'cause your love never fails. Or we could jump in at the G and get our song Waymaker and a ton of other songs. You are Waymaker, miracle, promise keep, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Now this loop that we just learned is the most common chord progression in all of worship music. You'll see these chord progressions all the time. In fact, you can play all the songs on this screen in the key of D using just this loop. So for your homework today, I want you to practice in 3 sessions, each about 10 minutes long. Here's a list of songs that follow the chord progression loop we just learned, as well as a list of other songs that use these 4 chords in slightly different orders. The chord charts will be in the description below. Pick a couple songs from this list and practice playing and singing along. So you've learned how to play hundreds of songs in the key of D. But what is a key, and what if you want to play in the key of C or the key of A? In day 2, we'll unlock 50% of all the keys in modern worship music without learning any new chords. And we're also going to dip our toe into the important music theory of the Nashville number system. So I'll see you on day 2. Alright, welcome to day 2. By the end of day 2, you'll be able to play 50% of modern worship songs. And you'll also come away understanding the all-important Nashville number system, which is crucial to modern worship music. So let's take a look at Waymaker again. But this time, let's say the worship leader wants to play Waymaker in the key of F instead of the key of D. How do we do that? Well, to start, let's talk about what a key is. A key is simply a group of notes that sound good together. As a cheat sheet, here's a chart that I made that shows all the notes that sound good together. So for example, in the key of G, the notes that sound good together would be G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G again. If I play notes that are all in the same key, it sounds really good. But as soon as I go out of key, it's going to sound bad like this. Not what we're going for. So yesterday, we learned Waymaker in the key of D, and the chords we learned were G, D, A, and B minor. But today, in the key of F, the chords would be B flat, F, C, and D minor. You might think, oh no, I don't know those chords. How am I going to play? But what's great is you don't need to learn any new chords. This is where a capo comes in. With this capo, we unlock half of the keys instantly, and we're not even to the other trick yet. Since we know the chords for the key of D, if I put this capo on my 1st fret, that would move all of my chords up to the key of E flat. If I was to move this capo up to the 2nd fret, all of my chords would now be in the key of E. If I moved it up to the 3rd fret, that would be all in the key of F, which is exactly what we're looking for. So 3 new keys, just like that, by putting a capo on. Now, if we just knew the key of D, I could technically keep moving this capo up really high and get a lot of different keys with that. But at that point, your guitar starts to sound a little bit more like a ukulele. That's not quite the sound we're going for modern worship. So that said, I only like to move the capo up about 5 frets or so. So to play in the key of F, we're going to put our capo on the 3rd fret, and we're still going to look at a key of D chord chart using the chords we already learned. We'll pretend that where the capo is where the head of the guitar was. So now our 1st fret is here, our 2nd fret is here, and our 3rd fret is here. So to play the chords we learned yesterday, I'll put my anchor notes on the new 3rd fret of this B string, and 2nd fret of this G string. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Now we're playing in the key of F, and we just unlocked 50% of all keys we could want to play in. Now if you look at this chart, you might think, how do we unlock 50% of keys if we still don't know all these other chords? If we look at Waymaker in the key of D, the chords are D, G, A, and B minor. If we were to look at the chords of All Hail King Jesus in the key of G, they would be G, C, D, and E minor. If we were to look at the chords of King of My Heart in the key of A, they would be A, D, E, and F sharp minor. Notice the pattern? You may have heard of the 1, 4, 5, 6. Hundreds of worship songs in all different keys use only the 1st, 4th, 5th, and 6th chords of that key. These 4 chords, the 1, 4, 5, and 6, are the backbone of worship music. This number system is called the Nashville number system, and in modern worship music, it's common to hear the worship leader say, let's play the 4 chord, instead of saying, for example, let's play the B flat. And because of capos, it's especially important for guitarists to understand the number system, because often the guitarist will be in a different key than the rest of the band is. There's a website I like to use for worship chord charts called worshiptogether.com, and you might notice that when you pick what key you want your chord chart in, you have an option to select number chart. So basically, instead of thinking of the D in the key of D as a D chord, we could think of it as the 1 chord. So that D, A, B minor, G loop we learned just yesterday could also be known as the 1, 5, 6, 4 loop. And that 1, 5, 6, 4 loop is used in tons of songs. And again, that could be looped and arranged to the 5, 6, 4, 1, the 6, 4, 1, 5, or the 4, 1, 5, 6. Occasionally, a song will throw in a 2 or a 3 chord, and rarely will they throw in a 7 chord. We'll get to the 2 and 3 chords in day 5, but with just knowing the 1, 4, 5, 6 and being able to capo, we've literally unlocked 50% of songs. But what about the remaining keys we haven't learned? In day 3, we're going to unlock the final 4 chords that will enable you to play in every key. Welcome to day 3. With 4 new chords and a capo, you're going to be able to play easily with a modern worship sound in every key. This key is a little bit more complex than the key we learned in day 1, but it's still going to have anchor notes. So again, 2 of our fingers are going to stay the same throughout all of the chord changes. So the capo unlocked half of the keys for us in the key of D, but now we're going to learn the next 4 chords that will unlock all of the keys. This is where the key of G comes in. Today we're going to learn the song All Hail King Jesus as our example. So let's learn the anchor notes for today. They're never going to move while we're in this key. Your pinky is going to go on the 3rd fret of the little E string, and your ring finger is going to go directly above it on the 3rd fret of the B string. I'm going to bar these notes with my pinky because my ring finger doesn't work, but again, just watch the chord diagrams for where to place your own fingers. So with those anchor notes in mind, let's learn our first chord, the C chord. Since we're in the key of G, I could also call this the 4 chord. So we're going to put our pointer finger on the D string, 2nd fret, and our middle finger on the A string, 3rd fret. Altogether, it should sound like that. Now for the G chord, or we could think of this as the 1 chord. You might think, we already learned a G chord, let's just use that. But that G chord actually works best in the key of D. So we're going to learn a G chord that works best for the key that we're currently in. This will make things much better in the long run because your fingers won't have to move as much, and also it's going to sound better for the key that we're in. Now this G chord is very similar to the C chord we learned, but our fingers are going to both move up a string. So our pointer finger is going to be on the A string, 2nd fret, and our middle finger on the big E string, 3rd fret. For the D chord, or the 5 chord, we're going to move our pointer finger to the G string, 2nd fret. And for our E minor, our pointer finger is going to go to the A string, 2nd fret, and our middle finger is going to go to the D string, 2nd fret. Altogether, it should sound like this. And if we use a capo, we can now play any of the songs on the screen in any key. I could play All Hail King Jesus in the key of B, like this. All Hail King Jesus. All hail the Lord of heaven and earth. Or I could use my D shapes and play in the key of F. All hail King Jesus. And I could move the capo and play either of those keys to unlock all of the possible keys you could ever want to play All Hail King Jesus in. So if you're in the key of D through F sharp, you're going to play your key of D chords and capo. And then if you're playing in the keys G through C sharp, you're going to use your key of G chords and capo as needed. Feel free to screenshot this chart for reference whenever you need the capo to get to a different key. So for homework today, again, do 3 practice sessions, each about 10 minutes long. Pick a couple songs from this list in any key and try to play using a capo, either the key of D or the key of G chords. For extra credit, look up a number chart and try to follow along using numbers in the key of D or the key of G. So now you know how to play the foundational chords in every key, but your strumming might sound basic and inconsistent. In day 4, we're going to learn some tricks for how to build powerfully and dynamically on the guitar. Welcome to day 4. By the end of today, your strumming won't sound choppy and basic, but it will sound professional, fluid, and powerful. Now, a lot of instructors might give what are called strum patterns like down, down, up, down, down, up, on and on, which can get a little complicated. And when I see beginners learning these strum patterns, they can often go down, pause, down, down, pause, down. And that pausing is actually detrimental. It gives you poor timing and it makes your playing sound jerky. But we want our strumming to sound more fluid and natural. So what we're going to do is put on a metronome. I like the app Pro Metronome, and I just put it on my phone. And we'll set our tempo to 80 BPM. And then I like to alternate the sound of each beat to give a little differentiation. So if you look at a chord chart like Waymaker, which I'll have links in the description, you'll see that the chords are placed loosely above the words that they're sung with. But to be more precise, most songs are in 4/4 time, meaning there's 4 beats for each chord and then you would change. So for Waymaker, it might sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I want you to practice that, singing along with Waymaker and strumming only down beats with the metronome. The next thing we're going to play are what are called eighth notes. So we can swap the metronome to twice as fast now, so I'll put it at 160. And this time we're going to incorporate some up strums as well. So we can think of this as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Down strums will be on the numbers, up strums will be on the ands. And one note I like to make, think of your elbow as if it's pinned in place. Wherever it puts your hand above the sound hole in a comfortable position, keep your elbow in place and make sure that your whole arm isn't moving. And your elbow is like a hinge. So you're not doing a floppy wrist and you're not moving your whole arm. Your arm is like a pendulum, just like that metronome, going up and down to the beats. So now play through Waymaker, doing up and down with the metronome at 160. So this should be nice and consistent once you get the hang of it, but it might sound kind of plain and boring. This is where strum patterns come in. I'll show you one since they're so common, but they can be complicated, so they aren't my favorite strategy. I'll introduce it, but then I'll show the strategy I prefer for strumming. Now, all strum patterns are basically what we just learned, a series of downs and ups, but occasionally skipping a down or upbeat to make more interesting rhythms. But we need to be careful. Instead of thinking down, pause, down, down, pause, you want to always keep your arm moving and think of it more like down, skip, down, up. So even when you skip an upbeat or a downbeat, your arm is still moving. It's just skipping the string on its way up or down. So let's practice a pattern. 1, 3, 5, and 6, and 7, and 8, and. Or down, 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 up, down, up. You are. Patterns are helpful for practice, but they can be complicated. So instead of learning a bunch of strumming patterns, I recommend feeling it out with whatever sounds most natural to you. A good way is to clap a song's rhythm out. Maybe I hear more and I might try to do a similar thing with my guitar. So for homework homework today, try these 3 exercises and work through the song Waymaker and try out a bunch of different strum patterns. The important thing is to make sure your up and down strums are consistent with the metronome, with your arm moving to the metronome and skipping beats as needed. So on days 1 through 3, we learned the 1, 4, 5, and 6 of all keys, which opened up hundreds of songs. And today we learned how to build strum patterns. But what about playing songs like Praise by Elevation Worship, which use a 2 minor or a 3 minor chord? In the next video, we're going to learn the final 4 chords that will finally unlock 100% of modern worship songs. Alright, welcome to day 5. So we've learned the 1, 4, 5, and 6 in every key, but today we're going to learn the final 4 chords that will literally unlock every modern worship song. Aside from gospel music, modern worship music has been very simple for a long time. Especially in the 90s, early 2000s, it was especially rare that a song would use anything besides the 1, 4, 5, and 6 chords. Over time though, bands like Maverick City and Elevation Worship have started incorporating more gospel elements, which is a much more complex genre, and will use different chords than the 1, 4, 5, and 6. Let's take the bridge of Praise by Elevation Worship, for example. The chords in the key of D are D, E minor, F sharp minor, and G. In the key of D, we already know the D and we already know the G chord, but we don't yet know the E minor and F sharp minor chords. And that's because if we look at the chord chart, those are the 2 and 3 minor chords. So if we wanted to play the E minor chord, we're going to keep our ring finger rooted where it was for all our other chords, but we're going to move our pointer finger to the A string, 2nd fret, and we're going to move our middle finger to the D string, 2nd fret. So it'll sound like this. And to play the F sharp minor, we're going to return our pointer finger back to its anchor position. So now we'll have our pointer finger and ring finger on our anchor position, but we're going to move our middle finger up to the big E string, 2nd fret. That's what our F sharp minor is going to sound like. I praise 'cause you're sovereign, praise 'cause you reign, praise 'cause you rose and defeated the grave, praise 'cause you're sovereign, praise 'cause you reign, praise 'cause you rose and defeated the grave. And then after that bridge, praise goes right back into the chorus, which is our normal 1, 4, 5, and 6 chords. The chords are actually 6, 4, 1, 5, which is part of that standard worship loop we learned earlier. If we were to play this song in the key of G, we need to learn the A minor and the B minor chords. I won't go through these chords in detail, but I'll put the tabs on the screen right here. At this point, you guys understand how to read chord diagrams great. And now, with the addition of these 4 chords, you can play all keys, all chords, and all worship songs. You did it! You learned your first 5 days of worship acoustic guitar, and you're well on your way to becoming an acoustic pro. If you made it to the end, congrats. I'd love to hear in the comments below which tips were most helpful and impactful for you. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more worship content in the future. I'll see you in the next video.